The city of Atlanta hummed outside, a restless beast of concrete and glass, but inside Nia's apartment, silence reigned. It was a curated quiet, thick with the scent of turpentine and old paper, punctuated only by the soft scrape of charcoal on canvas. Her studio, perched on the third floor of a converted textile mill in West Midtown, was her sanctuary and her cage. Sunlight, filtered through the grimy panes of a large industrial window, illuminated dust motes dancing in the air, tiny, silent specters, just like the ones in her mind. Nia was an artist, or at least that's what she told people. Her online store, Ember and Ash Creations, sold abstract mixed media pieces that explored themes of loss, resilience, and reconstruction. Critics called her work hauntingly beautiful and profoundly evocative. They didn't know the half of it. Each brushstroke, each layered texture, was a fragment of a memory she couldn't quite grasp, a shadow of an experience that defined her, yet remained just beyond her conscious reach. At 28, Nia carried a weight that felt far older. Her eyes, deep set and the color of roasted coffee, often held a distant, wary look, as if always scanning the horizon for a storm that had already passed. Her short, intricately braided hair framed a face that was strikingly beautiful, but rarely broke into a full, uninhibited smile. It was a smile she hadn't truly felt since she was 8 years old, before the fire. The fire. That was the invisible anchor, tethering her to a past she couldn't outrun. It wasn't the physical scars that troubled her. She'd emerged from the blaze, mostly unscathed, a miracle her mother never ceased to thank God for. It was the internal charring, the way certain sounds or smells could send a chill down her spine, the irrational panic that seized her whenever she heard a distant siren or caught a whiff of burnt toast. And the nightmares. Always the nightmares. Hazy, suffocating visions of smoke, heat, and a desperate, childish cry that always faded just before she could identify it. She lived a meticulously ordered life, a stark contrast to the chaos that lurked beneath her calm exterior. Her days were a rhythm of early morning runs along the Beltline, hours lost in her studio, and evenings spent meticulously managing her online presence, sometimes with the company of a good book or a documentary. Friends were few, chosen carefully, and kept at an emotional arm's length. Casual dating was a non-starter. How could she invite anyone into the intricate, fire-damaged architecture of her soul? "You're a fortress," Nia, her best friend, Layla, had once told her with a mixture of affection and frustration. Layla was a whirlwind of vibrant energy, a fashion stylist with an infectious laugh who somehow managed to crack Nia's carefully constructed shell, if only slightly. "One day, someone's gonna scale those walls, or you're gonna let 'em in." Nia had just shrugged, a non-committal gesture that Layla knew meant, not likely. Today, the silence of her studio felt different, agitated. It wasn't the comforting quiet she usually sought. It was the kind of silence that precedes a storm, taut with unspoken things. She'd been sketching, trying to capture the elusive texture of grief in charcoal, when her phone buzzed with an incoming call. It was Layla. "Nia, girl, you would not believe who I just saw!" Layla's voice, usually a soothing balm, was edged with a frantic excitement. Nia sighed, bracing herself. Layla's encounters were always dramatic. "Who, Layla? Beyonce's personal shopper? No, even wilder. Remember Malik? Malik Jenkins." The charcoal slipped from Nia's fingers, clattering softly onto the wooden floor. Malik. The name was a ghost, a whisper from a life she had tried to seal away. Malik, her childhood confidante, her partner in countless make-believe adventures, the boy who lived across the hall in the decrepit West End apartment, building before it all went up in smoke. Malik? Naya's voice was barely a breath. I haven't seen or heard from him since we moved. That was a diplomatic way of saying, since the fire ripped our lives apart, and his family seemed to vanish into thin air, leaving us to pick up the pieces alone. Yeah, I was at the new luxury high-rise opening downtown, you know, the one on Peachtree. He's like a big shot now, real estate mogul or something. Dressed in a designer suit, looking all kinds of important. He was even giving interviews to a local news crew. Layla gushed, oblivious to the sudden chill that had gripped Nia. A cold dread seeped into Nia's bones, slowly at first, then spreading like ink. Malik, here, now. All these years, she'd assumed he'd faded into obscurity, or at least stayed far away from anything that would remind her of their shared, shattered past. But a real estate mogul in Atlanta. It was a city he'd grown up in, a city where the embers of their collective history still glowed, if only faintly, for her. He asked about you, Nia. Layla continued, dropping the bombshell that Nia hadn't known she was bracing for. He said, Is Nia still around? Tell her Malik says hi. He even remembered your art, said he saw some of your earlier work online, and it was powerful stuff. Nia felt a knot tighten in her stomach. Powerful stuff. Was that what he thought? Did he ever think about the origins of that power, the raw, searing pain that fueled her every creation? Malik, the boy who had once promised to be her partner in crime, now a successful man, casually sending greetings from a life she couldn't even fathom. The thought was disorienting, unsettling. It felt like an intrusion. Nia, you there? Layla's voice pulled her back to the present. Yeah, I'm here. Just surprised. Girl, you sound like you saw a ghost. He looked good, actually, really good. You should connect with him. Maybe he's changed. Changed. The word echoed in Nia's head. Some things she knew could never truly change. The past, especially a past steeped in tragedy, had a way of leaving indelible marks. And for Nia, Malik was inextricably linked to that indelible mark. After she hung up with Layla, Nia stared at her half-finished charcoal sketch. The swirling, chaotic lines suddenly seemed less abstract, more literal. The unseen smoke, the phantom cry. Malik's name had stirred something deep within her, something she had deliberately suppressed for 2 decades. A question, an unresolved ache. Why had his family left so quickly after the fire? Why had the Jenkins family, who lived on the floor above them, seemingly escaped the blaze with minimal damage, while her family had lost everything, including her baby brother Leo? The official report had been accidental electrical fire, but even as an 8-year-old, Nia had sensed a hurried finality to the investigation, a desire to close the case. The dust motes in the sunlight seemed to swirl faster, mimicking the disquiet in her mind. Malik's reappearance wasn't just a blast from the past, it was a detonation. It felt like the universe was demanding she finally confront the ghosts she had so carefully entombed. The embers she thought were long dead were flickering again, threatening to ignite a truth she wasn't sure she was ready to face. She walked over to her bookshelf, her fingers tracing the spines of worn art books until they landed on a dusty photo album. It was an old, faded thing, filled with pictures from before the fire. Her family, intact, smiling. Her baby brother, Leo, a chubby, cheeked toddler with boundless energy, clutching a bright red fire truck toy. And there on a page near the end, a picture of her and Malik, arms around each other, grinning gap-toothed at the camera. They were holding hands. Best friends forever. A tremor ran through her. Forever was a fleeting concept when flames consumed everything. What secrets did Malik hold? What did his success mean in the shadow of their shared trauma? The silence in the studio was no longer comforting. It was a vacuum, pulling her into a past she had painstakingly tried to forget, a past that was now demanding its reckoning. The unseen smoke was beginning to cloud her vision, threatening to choke her with forgotten truths. The memories came in fractured flashes, like shards of glass glinting in the dark. Nia sat on the edge of her bed, the old photo album open on her lap, its pages whispering tales of a life that felt impossibly distant. The face of 8-year-old Nia, beaming, unaware of the inferno that awaited, mocked her present self. Life in the West End apartments had been simple, vibrant, and loud. The building, a grand old dame with peeling paint and creaking floorboards, housed a community. Doors were always open. Laughter and the scent of various cuisines spilled into the hallways. Nia's family lived on the second floor, her hardworking mother, Evelyn, her steadfast father, David, and her little brother, Leo, a whirlwind of joy, 2 years old and perpetually curious. Across the hall lived the Jenkins family. Mr. and Mrs. Jenkins, kind, quiet people who always had an extra cookie for Nia, and their 2 sons, Malik, Nia's age, her inseparable shadow and co-conspirator, and Jamal, 5 years older, a gangly, moody teenager who always seemed to be lurking in the shadows, smoking cigarettes on the fire escape and mumbling into a flip phone. Nia and Malik were a unit. They built pillow forts, chased pigeons in the courtyard, and traded secrets in hushed whispers. Their apartment building was their kingdom, its narrow hallways and communal stairwells the setting for epic adventures. They dreamed of growing up, moving out, and building a treehouse bigger than anyone had ever seen. Then came the night of the fire. October 17th. A cool, crisp autumn night that had started like any other. Nia had been asleep, dreaming of chasing butterflies with Leo, when the piercing shriek of the smoke alarm ripped her from slumber. Her mother's frantic voice, her father's shout. The smell of something acrid, sharp burning. Chaos. The hallway was already thick with smoke, black and suffocating, stinging her eyes and burning her throat. Her father, a tower of calm amidst the storm, had scooped her up. "Stay low, Nia! Don't look back!" He'd yelled, his voice muffled by the roar of the flames that seemed to erupt from the apartment below them. They crawled. The floor was searing hot. Panic had a tasty metallic and bitter. Nia remembered clinging to her father, her face pressed into his shirt, desperately trying to block out the terror. They made it to the fire escape, her mother right behind them. But something was wrong. Her mother was screaming, a high-pitched, guttural sound that still echoed in Nia's worst nightmares. "Leo! Where's Leo?" Her father's face, illuminated by the orange glow of the inferno, was a mask of horror. He'd gone back. In his panic, in the blinding smoke, he hadn't realized Leo wasn't with them. Leo, who loved to hide, who sometimes snuck into the bathroom to play with the bath toys, or under his bed with his red fire truck. Nia had been pulled down the fire escape by a neighbor, an older woman named Mrs. Henderson, who had wrapped a damp towel around Nia's face. From the ground, she watched in agonizing slow motion as her family's apartment. The one with the bright yellow door and the flower pots turned into a gaping maw of fire. Firefighters arrived, their sirens wailing, their axes hacking at doors. Her father emerged, coughing, soot-stained, but empty-handed. He collapsed, sobbing, into her mother's arms. Leo was gone. The aftermath was a blur of grief, confusion, and charity. The Red Cross temporary shelters, clothes donated by strangers. The constant, heavy silence from her parents, broken only by their muffled cries at night. And then there was Malik. Nia remembered seeing him the next day. He stood with his parents outside the charred remains of the building, looking remarkably unaffected. Their apartment, on the 3rd floor, had sustained some smoke damage, but was largely untouched by the flames. Nia, numb with shock, had expected him to run to her, to share in her devastation, but he hadn't. He just stared, his eyes wide and unreadable. His older brother Jamal had been there too, looking sullen, his gaze flicking nervously around. What Nia remembered most vividly, a memory she had dismissed as a child's overactive imagination, was seeing Jamal just before the smoke alarms had gone off. She'd woken up for a glass of water, and peering through the peephole of her front door, she'd seen him. He was standing outside the door of the apartment directly below theirs, the apartment belonging to old Mr. Eldridge, the landlord, who lived alone and was rarely there. Jamal had been fumbling with something near the lock, his back to her, and then he'd hurried away, disappearing up the stairs to his family's 3rd floor apartment, just seconds before the first alarm shrieked. Nia had mentioned it to her mother later, her small voice choked with grief. "I saw Jamal by Mr. Eldridge's door, right before the fire, Mama. He was doing something." Her mother, lost in her own sorrow, had simply stroked Nia's hair. "It was an electrical fire, baby. Sometimes accidents happen. You must have been dreaming." And Nia, in her fragile state, had accepted it. Adults knew best. The fire department confirmed it accidental. Electrical. They moved quickly after that. Her parents, unable to bear the memories, packed what little they had left and moved to a small town in rural Georgia, far from Atlanta, far from the ashes of their past. Contact with the Jenkins family ceased. Malik's letters stopped coming after a few months, and eventually, the memories of him became hazy, swallowed by the more immediate, searing pain of loss. For years, Nia had buried it all under layers of art and carefully constructed detachment. She'd convinced herself that remembering Leo was enough. That morning was a private act, and that the details of the fire were best left in the realm of forgotten nightmares. But Layla's call had ripped the bandage off, exposing a festering wound. Malik's name, his presence, stirred the embers of doubt that had always smoldered beneath the surface. Now, as an adult, armed with the cold logic of an artist who sought truth in every detail, Nia couldn't simply dismiss her childhood memories as dreams. Mr. Eldridge, the landlord, he was an enigma. He rarely showed his face, preferring to deal with rent through a management company. He owned several buildings in the area, all old, some half empty, but he seemed to cling to them. Nia remembered her father complaining about him sometimes, about his refusal to make repairs, about hints of selling the building. A new, chilling thought began to form in Nia's mind, slowly, terrifyingly. What if it wasn't an accident? What if Jamal, the moody teenager who always seemed to be up to no good, had been involved? What if the Jenkins family's untouched apartment, their sudden disappearance from the neighborhood, wasn't a coincidence. Her fingers trembled as she picked up her phone. No more burying. No more denying the gnawing suspicion that had lurked in the periphery of her consciousness for 2 decades. She needed answers, and the internet, a vast ocean of information, was her first port of call. She typed, "West End apartment fire, Atlanta, October 17, into the search bar. Old newspaper archives, grainy photos, and digital scans of official reports began to populate her screen. The first few articles confirmed what she already knew. Tragic blaze claims young life. Electrical fire suspected. But as she scrolled deeper, sifting through the digital dust, a new phrase caught her eye in a small, obscure local blog post from a citizen journalist. Fire labeled suspicious. Investigation halted. Her breath hitched. Suspicious. The word hung in the air, heavy with implication. It was a detail her parents had never mentioned, or perhaps, in their profound grief, had simply overlooked or been shielded from. Why had the investigation been halted? Who had halted it? And why was this information so buried? A different kind of fire, cold and controlled, began to ignite within Nia. This wasn't the panic of a child, it was the resolve of a woman who had spent a lifetime living with ghosts. The truth, whatever it was, would finally be unearthed. And Malik, the boy who had once promised forever, was now an unexpected key to unlocking the dark secrets that had consumed her past. The word, suspicious, echoed in Nia's mind, a clanging bell in the quiet of her apartment. She spent the next few days immersed in old digital archives, a relentless detective piecing together fragments of a shattered past. Her studio, usually a haven of creativity, became a war room, cluttered with old news clippings, blurry photographs, and cryptic forum posts from 2 decades ago. The official reports stated electrical fire, but deeper digs revealed inconsistencies. A local fire marshal, retired now, had apparently expressed unexplained concerns about the rapid spread of the fire and the unusual lack of damage to the building's structural integrity, despite the intensity of the blaze. There was also a brief mention of a property dispute involving Mr. Eldridge, the landlord, and a developer looking to buy out old properties in the West End for a gentrification project. The developer's name, Jenkins Holdings. Nia's blood ran cold. Jenkins Holdings, Malik Jenkins. It couldn't be a coincidence. She found a grainy scanned police report, barely legible, mentioning a person of interest, questioned regarding the Eldridge apartment. The name was redacted, but the description of the individual, a teen male, 17, resident of the building, sent a jolt through her. 17. That was Jamal. A sickening feeling coiled in her stomach. Her childhood memory, dismissed as a dream, screamed with newfound clarity. Jamal fumbling at Mr. Eldridge's door, just moments before the inferno. She needed more. This was circumstantial, a web of conjecture built on old anxieties. She needed something tangible. A memory, a document, anything that would confirm her burgeoning horror. She remembered a box. A dusty, forgotten cardboard box tucked away in the back of her mother's attic, labeled, "Dad's Papers, Old House." Her father, meticulous to a fault, kept everything. Utility bills from a decade ago, tax documents, old insurance policies. What if, hidden amongst them, was a piece of the puzzle? The drive to her parents' house, nestled in a quiet, tree-lined suburb hours outside Atlanta, felt interminable. Her heart pounded with a nervous anticipation she hadn't felt since she was a child waiting for Christmas. She tried to maintain a facade of casual visitation, but her mother, ever perceptive, noticed her unusual restlessness. "Everything all right, sweetie? You seem preoccupied." Evelyn's voice was soft, laced with the worry that had never truly left her eyes since Leo. "Just a bit of artist's block, Mama. Needed a change of scenery." Nia forced a smile, knowing the lie was flimsy. Later that evening, after dinner, Nia made her excuse. "I was thinking about some old photo albums, Mama. Do you still have that box of Dad's papers from the old house, the one with the pictures he took?" Her mother frowned slightly. "Oh, that old thing? It's probably still in the attic, gathering dust. Why do you need it?" "Just for inspiration," Nia replied, her voice carefully neutral. "Maybe some of the old neighborhood photos for a new series." Evelyn, accustomed to Nia's artistic whims, simply nodded. "Well, be careful up there. It's a mess." The attic was a mausoleum of forgotten memories, draped in dust sheets and smelling of cedar and forgotten dreams. Nia found the box quickly, tucked behind old suitcases and faded Christmas decorations. Dad's Papers Old House. She pulled it down, her hands trembling. Back in her childhood bedroom, a room still decorated with the wallpaper her mother had chosen, Nia carefully opened the box. Inside there were indeed stacks of papers, old bills, bank statements, yellowed receipts. And then, at the bottom, beneath a pile of tax returns, she found it. A legal document. Not a lease, but a notice of intent to vacate. It wasn't from her parents, but from Mr. Eldridge, the landlord, addressed to all tenants of the building. The date on the notice was just 3 months before the fire, and it wasn't a standard notice. It outlined a proposition: tenants who vacated by a certain date would receive a substantial relocation bonus, far more than what was legally required, to facilitate the sale of the building to a new development company. Those who remained, it subtly implied, might face less favorable terms. Her parents, Nia remembered, had talked about it. They were considering moving anyway, looking for a bigger place. But they hadn't taken the offer. They loved their community, their neighbors. And then another document fell out from between the folds of the notice. A typewritten letter, unsigned, but clearly from her father, addressed to a lawyer. It was a draft, filled with her father's distinctive, neat handwriting in the margins. He was expressing concern about the aggressive tactics of the development company, accusing them of harassment and intimidation to force tenants out. He mentioned strong arming tactics and hinted at a plan to rally other tenants to collectively resist the buyout. The letter explicitly named the development company, Jenkins Properties. Nia gasped a raw, guttural sound that seemed to tear through the quiet room. Jenkins. Not just Malik's family, but their business. A real estate company. This wasn't some random electrical accident. This was calculated. This was deliberate. The twist was a gut punch, a betrayal more profound than she could have imagined. Malik's family wasn't just unaffected, they were the perpetrators. They wanted the building. They wanted it empty. And the fire, her brother's death, was a horrific, collateral consequence of their ruthless ambition. Her mind raced, connecting the dots. Jamal, the moody teenager, acting as a pawn or perhaps a willing participant in his family's scheme, targeting Mr. Eldridge's empty apartment. The accidental electrical fire, ruling a convenient narrative to cover up a heinous crime. The hurried investigation, the suppressed information, it all clicked into place with horrifying clarity. Malik, the boy who was her best friend, the successful real estate mogul, he was a Jenkins. He was part of this. Could he have known? Even as a child, could he have been complicit or at least aware of the dark truth behind his family's prosperity? Her phone buzzed. It was Layla. "Hey, girl, I just ran into Malik again!" He's hosting a big charity gala next month for an art foundation. Said he'd love for you to come. Maybe even display some of your pieces. Said it was a good networking opportunity. Nia stared at the phone, a cold, hard lump of fury forming in her chest. An art foundation, charity, all while built on the ashes of her life, on the stolen breath of her little brother. The hypocrisy was a bitter taste in her mouth. The innocent childhood memories of Malik, the laughter, the secrets shared, crumbled into dust. They were replaced by a chilling image of a powerful man, his hands stained with the invisible suit of a tragedy he or his family had orchestrated. The naive child who had mourned her brother and simply accepted the narrative of accident was gone. In her place was a woman consumed by a righteous, terrifying rage. The twist wasn't just about the fire, it was about the fundamental betrayal of trust, the calculated destruction of her family, all for profit. And the perpetrators weren't faceless entities, they were the very people she had once called friends. Nia took a deep breath, the old trauma mixing with a new, searing anger. The initial shock began to subside, replaced by a grim determination. She wouldn't just sit with this truth. She wouldn't let it fester. Malik Jenkins and his family would finally face the consequences of their dark secret. The time for grieving was over. Now, it was time for reckoning. The invitation to Malik's charity gala sat on Nia's desk, a gleaming, gold-embossed card that mocked her with its elegance. It wasn't just an invitation. It was a gauntlet thrown. He wanted her there. He wanted to parade his success, perhaps even subtly rub salt in the 20-year-old wound, thinking she was none the wiser. The thought ignited a cold fury that simmered beneath her skin. Nia didn't waste time on indecision. The days following her discovery in her parents' attic were a blur of meticulous planning. She spent hours researching legal precedents, digging deeper into property acquisition laws, and piecing together a timeline that intertwined the Eldridge building fire with Jenkins. Properties, aggressive expansion. She even consulted, discreetly, with a retired investigative journalist Layla knew, under the guise of researching a fictional crime novel. The journalist, a grizzled veteran named Mr. Hayes, confirmed her suspicions it reeked of an old arson-for-profit scheme, often executed by low-level thugs, but sometimes by more sophisticated players aiming for urban renewal. They'd set a small, controlled fire. Hayes explained, his voice gravelly over the phone. Enough to make the building uninhabitable, scare out the remaining tenants, but not so much it draws too much attention. If a life is lost, it's usually an unintended, tragic consequence. Makes it even harder to prove. Unintended, tragic consequence. The words clawed at Nia's throat. Leo's life, reduced to a regrettable collateral damage in someone's real estate portfolio. She knew a direct confrontation with Malik alone wouldn't suffice. He was too polished, too practiced in the art of evasion. She needed an audience, a public stage where his carefully constructed facade could crumble. The gala was perfect. The night of the event, Nia dressed not for a social gathering, but for a battle. She chose a simple, elegant black dress that clung to her frame, understated yet powerful. Her hair was pulled back tightly, revealing the sharp angles of her jaw. Her eyes, usually guarded, now held a dangerous glint. In her clutch, She carried not a compact, but a discreetly folded stack of documents, copies of her father's letter, the Eldridge notice, and the archived blog post hinting at the halted investigation. The grand ballroom of the hotel gleamed with opulence. Chandeliers sparkled, champagne flowed, and the air buzzed with the self-congratulatory murmur of Atlanta's elite. Naya moved through the crowd like a phantom, her gaze fixed on the podium where Malik, looking every inch the successful magnate, was already mingling, shaking hands, and flashing his practiced smile. He caught her eye across the room, and for a split second, his smile faltered. A flicker of something, surprise or perhaps apprehension, crossed his face before he recomposed himself, offering a nod. Nia nodded back, a silent acknowledgement that carried a promise of impending doom. As the evening progressed, the speeches began. Malik, charismatic and articulate, took the stage to address the crowd, waxing poetic about community, art, and giving back. He spoke of his humble beginnings, of his dedication to building a better Atlanta. Every word was a knife twisting in Nia's gut. When he finished, the room erupted in applause. Malik stepped down, moving through the crowd, accepting congratulations. He made his way towards Nia, his expression a careful blend of cordiality and a barely perceptible unease. "Nia, I'm so glad you could make it," he said, extending a hand. His grip was firm, confident. "It's been a long time. You look well, Malik," Nia replied, her voice steady, betraying none of the tremor in her hands. She ignored his outstretched hand, opting instead for a cool, direct gaze. "It has been a long time. 20 years, actually. Enough time for secrets to fester." His eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly. "Secrets, I'm not sure what you mean." He chuckled, a brittle sound. "Look, I'm glad you're here. I've followed your work. It's truly exceptional. I was hoping we could talk, catch up properly sometime, maybe even discuss some collaboration opportunities for future Jenkins projects." "Oh, we're definitely going to discuss Jenkins projects," Nia said, her voice dropping, laden with meaning. "But perhaps not in the way you're envisioning." She saw Layla approaching, a bright smile on her face, but Nia subtly shook her head, a silent warning to stay back. This was her fight. "You know, Malik," Nia continued, raising her voice just enough to carry over the ambient chatter, drawing a few curious glances from those nearby. "I was doing some research recently. About our old neighborhood, about the West End apartments." Malik's practiced smile tightened, a muscle in his jaw twitching. Nostalgia. It was a difficult time, a tragedy. But we moved past it, didn't we? "Did we?" Nia challenged, her gaze unwavering. "My family lost everything, Malik. My little brother Leo lost his life, all in an accidental electrical fire that, upon closer inspection, seems to have been anything but accidental." A few more heads turned. The polite hum of conversation began to falter, replaced by a growing silence. Malik's composure began to crack, a thin fissure appearing in his polished veneer. "Nia, this isn't the place," he hissed, attempting to steer her away, his hand on her arm. "Let's discuss this privately." "No," she stated, pulling her arm away. "The truth has been private for too long. 20 years, Malik. 20 years of my parents' mourning. 20 years of me living with ghosts, while your family built an empire on the ashes of our lives." She pulled the folded documents from her clutch. "Did you know, Malik, that your family's company, Jenkins Properties, was trying to buy out the Eldridge building just months before the fire? Did you know they were using aggressive tactics to force tenants out?" My father even wrote a letter to a lawyer about it. She unfolded the notice and the draft letter, holding them up for him to see, though few others could read them from a distance. Malik's face went ashen. He looked around wildly, his eyes darting to the curious onlookers, then back to Nia, a desperate plea in them. Nia, you're mistaken. This is a misunderstanding. My family, my father, he was a shrewd businessman, but he would never. Shrewd. Nia scoffed, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. Is that what you call it? Setting a fire in a residential building, risking lives, simply to clear the way for your next big development. She saw a woman, likely a member of the gala's organizing committee, approach, her face etched with concern. Mr. Jenkins, is everything all right? Malik stammered. Yes, everything is fine. Just a private matter. It's hardly private when a child dies because of your family's greed. Nia's voice, though not a shout, carried with the force of raw, unbridled pain and righteous anger. Your brother Jamal Malik. He was seen at Mr. Eldridge's door that night. The fire was declared suspicious, and the investigation was suddenly halted. All for Jenkins Properties to acquire the land cheaply? The room was now utterly silent. All eyes were on them. Malik's carefully constructed world was crumbling around him. His jaw clenched, his eyes filled with a tortured anguish that Nia had never seen before. Jamal, he told me? Malik finally whispered, his voice hoarse, broken. Years ago, before he disappeared. He said it was an accident. He was supposed to just damage the electrical box, make it look like a wiring fault, scare everyone out. He never meant for it to spread. He never meant for anyone to get hurt, especially not Leo. The admission hung in the air, a devastating confession. The truth finally, after 2 decades. Malik's complicity, or at least his knowledge, was undeniable. He had carried this secret, lived with it, prospered from it, while Nia's family endured a lifetime of grief. The fallout was immediate and visceral. Malik, defeated, visibly shrank before her eyes, the carefully tailored suit suddenly too large for his slumping frame. Murmurs erupted through the crowd, whispers of arson, Jenkins Properties, tragedy. News cameras, which had moments before been focused on the glittering charity event, now zoomed in on Nia and the distraught Malik, their flashes momentarily blinding. Layla rushed forward, wrapping an arm around Nia, her face a mixture of shock and support. Nia felt a strange sensation, a mixture of triumph and hollowness. The truth was out. The burden finally was shared. But the immense emotional cost, the revelation of such a profound betrayal from someone she had once loved, left her feeling utterly drained. The scorched earth of her past was now fully exposed, and she stood amidst the ashes, unsure of what, if anything, could ever truly grow there again. Justice, it seemed, came with a bitter aftertaste. The days following the gala were a whirlwind of media attention. News channels clamored for Nia's story, sensationalizing the artist, exposes developer angle. The Jenkins family issued a terse public statement, denying any knowledge of the alleged arson and distancing themselves from Jamal, who, they claimed, had been estranged for years before his disappearance. Malik, however, remained silent, his public image shattered, his empire teetering. The initial triumph Nia felt quickly gave way to a profound exhaustion, a weariness that settled deep in her bones. The truth was out, but what now? The justice she had craved felt incomplete. It was a public humiliation, a dismantling of a carefully constructed facade, but it wouldn't bring Leo back. It wouldn't erase the 20 years of her parents' quiet grief, or the nightmares that still clung to the edges of her sleep. Layla was her rock. She shielded Nia from the more aggressive reporters, brought her food, and simply sat with her in the studio, allowing Nia to process the seismic shift in her world. "What are you going to do?" Layla asked one evening, as Nia stared blankly at a canvas, unable to pick up a brush. "Are you going to sue them? Go to the police?" Nia sighed, running a hand through her hair. "The police, it's been 20 years, Layla. Evidence is gone, witnesses are scattered. Jamal is gone. It would be a messy, drawn-out legal battle with no guarantee of conviction, and even if they were charged, what then? More headlines. More reliving every painful detail." Her mind drifted to Malik. She hadn't spoken to him since the gala. She saw his tormented face, the raw pain in his eyes as he admitted Jamal's confession. He wasn't the grinning boy from her childhood, nor the arrogant mogul. He was a man crushed by the weight of a family secret, a man who, perhaps, had been as much a victim of his circumstances as she was. He hadn't set the fire. He had only carried the secret. The desire for retribution, once a burning inferno, had begun to cool, replaced by a complex understanding. Revenge felt like continuing the cycle of destruction. It wouldn't heal her. It would only perpetuate the bitterness. True justice, she realized, might not be found in external punishment, but in internal peace. Nia walked over to her art supplies, picking up a fresh canvas. This time, she wasn't sketching a ghost. She was looking to paint a new landscape. She thought of Leo, not as a victim, but as a bright, curious spirit. She thought of her parents, who had endured so much, and who deserved a measure of peace. She began to paint. Not the abstract, shadowed pieces she was known for, but something different. She chose vibrant colors, shades of sunrise and verdant growth. She created a series of works titled Unseen Bloom. Each piece depicted a landscape, at first barren and scorched, but slowly, miraculously, giving way to new life, a single resilient sprout pushing through cracked earth, a cluster of wildflowers blossoming where ashes had fallen, a tree reaching skyward with new, hopeful leaves. She painted Leo, not as a fading memory, but as a vivid, laughing presence, his red fire truck a symbol of innocence, transformed into a beacon of resilience. She incorporated subtle elements of the building, its architectural lines softened, almost becoming part of the natural landscape, implying that even from ruin, beauty could emerge. It was a slow, arduous process, each brushstroke an act of catharsis, of releasing the anger and grief that had held her captive for so long. She wasn't ignoring the past, she was transforming it. She was acknowledging the scar, but choosing not to let it define her. When the series was complete, Nia decided not to pursue any further legal action against the Jenkins family. She released a carefully worded statement through Layla, explaining her decision. She stated that while the truth had been revealed, her focus was on healing and moving forward. She expressed hope that the Jenkins family would reflect on their past actions, acknowledging the profound harm caused. It wasn't forgiveness, not truly. It was a choice for herself, a choice for peace. The Unseen Bloom series debuted in a small gallery in a renovated building in West End, just blocks from where her old apartment building once stood. The irony wasn't lost on her. The opening was packed. Critics who had once praised her haunting work now lauded her for her bravery, her resilience, and the profound beauty she had found in moving beyond tragedy. Malik attended the opening. He stood quietly in a corner, dressed in a subdued suit, a shadow of his former self. His business had suffered, his reputation tarnished, but he was still here. As the crowd thinned, he approached Nia. "Nia," he said, his voice raspy, "your work, it's extraordinary. I don't know what to say. I'm truly sorry. For everything. For carrying the secret for my family's actions." Jamal, he was terrified. My parents, they were desperate. Nia looked at him, truly looked at him, for the first time in 20 years. She saw a man burdened, not just by public disgrace, but by the private weight of his family's sins. "Your apology doesn't bring Leo back, Malik," she said, her voice soft, devoid of the rage that had fueled her for so long. "But it's a start for you." He nodded, a flicker of something, perhaps hope, in his eyes. "What now?" he asked. "Now," Nia said, turning to look at her painting of the vibrant, growing landscape, "we find a way to live. We find a way to build something new, something real, from the ashes." The morally complex ending wasn't a neat bow tied around a tale of justice. It was messy, human, and deeply personal. Nia hadn't destroyed Malik, nor had she fully absolved him. She had chosen a different path, one of healing, of creation, and of transforming her pain into something beautiful and enduring. The secret had been unearthed, the betrayal exposed, but the true triumph was not in vengeance, but in the unseen bloom of resilience, in the silent, powerful choice to cultivate peace within the scorched earth of her past. The embers of the old fire still glowed, a perpetual reminder, but now a quiet, vibrant garden was growing around them. Nia was finally free to tend to it.